Good morning, everybody. I've been having the most action-packed, realistic dreams lately, and I don't know what's going on. At first, I thought maybe it's a regurgitation or a purging, so to speak, of all the stress that I've been harboring since leaving corporate America in 2024. And I'm not sure what this means or if anything. Probably nothing. Who knows? The first one was a few weeks back, and I had this dream that I walked in to my childhood home where my grandparents lived. This home had a small kitchen and then a living room. In the dream, the couch was still the same tapestry of floral print with the wooden armrests from like the 70s. And then beyond that was this big door that was always closed in my childhood home. And I remember hearing a noise, and first of all, I looked up and the ceiling had all of these flowers growing out of it. Flowers, greenery, plants hanging down. It was creepy. It was like plants were just overgrowing the entire house. And then I heard a noise, so I opened that big door, and I saw a raccoon and a squirrel tumbling around in a circle and playing. But when they saw me, they froze in time. They just stopped twirling and they were just frozen there, hovering. And when I woke up from that dream, my first initial thought was, I just experienced a parallel universe. It was like the same exact everything, but I shouldn't have been there. It was so strange. And the dream went on, though. I had walked down the hall to my bedroom. My grandfather was standing in the hallway, and my grandmother was sitting on the couch, and they were speaking to me in the dream. I don't remember verbatim what they said to me, but it was just the creepy factor that they were talking to me. Both of my grandparents passed on a long time ago. They looked exactly the same as how I remembered them, but once I got into my bed, and it was the same layout as I had as a child, the same bed and everything. Once I got into my bed, I closed my eyes, and my grandmother walked in, and she walked over to me, and she leaned over into my ear, and she said, "Wake up." I woke up back in my bed. I had to double check myself. Oh, where am I? Type of thing. And it was so creepy, but then it got worse. The next time I dreamt something similar, it was a big old castle building. I've never been to a place like this before. I've seen them on TV, like a very old, maybe Victorian structure. Almost looks like it was out of London, with great big pillars coming out of giant slab marble floors. But once again, when I looked up from the table where I was seated waiting for lunch, I looked up, and coming out of the ceiling were plants. The ceiling was decayed. There were plants hanging down. There was moss growing on the sheetrock or plaster or whatever this ceiling was made from back in that era. And the dream was so realistic. There were colors in this dream. There were colors in my childhood home dream as well. The walls were like a creamy ivory. The plants were vibrant green. Even the tables had a different color. The marble floors were a different color. And I remember just looking at these plants, and it was creeping me out. But the weird thing was, I thought it was familiar. Like in the dream, I didn't recall the dream about my grandparents' house. But in this dream, I was thinking to myself, I've seen that before. Where do I know the plants from the ceiling before? It was creepy. And then when the waitress came over, I called her Amy. And I said, "Amy," and she turned around and she said, "My name isn't Amy." Truth be known, I don't know an Amy. So I was like, what? Who's Amy? And then the dream took a weirder turn. I ended up walking outside to the sidewalk. It was a bright sunny day. I remember feeling the warmth on my skin. I remember the blue skies and fluffy white clouds. And I turned around and I insisted on everybody that walked in that that was Amy. I was strongly pursuing that idea with anybody walking in that door, that that was the real Amy. To this day, I still don't know why I dreamt that. I don't know an Amy. And that brings me to the dream I had last night. This has such a creepy factor to it. I don't know what's going on in my head, but I dreamt that I wanted to move, and I picked a house in a neighborhood where all the houses were different from one another. There was no cookie cutter house. All of these houses were way different from one another. Even the neighborhood was different from one street to the next. For example, I was on one street that ran this way, but then this street here connected to another street that was all ice. The whole entire street was like an ice skating rink. And I went out the door to explore the new neighbors and the new roads in the neighborhood and that type of thing. And when I got to the ice street, I walked over there and I didn't have appropriate shoes. I was slipping and sliding everywhere, and a neighbor came out of her house and she was in a big, heavy parka. And she said, "Oh, it gets cold over here. You might want to put a coat on." Well, on my street, it was sunny as Florida. So I was nice and warm over there, but now over here, I'm freezing. And all of a sudden, as I'm talking to this lady, I look past her and there is a polar bear charging at me full speed ahead. And that polar bear came running down that street. Well, I didn't have anything but like sneakers on. So I was slipping and sliding, trying to get out of this polar bear's way, freaking out, panicking. And I just remember being terrified of this polar bear. And the polar bear, he didn't even stop. It was like an action movie. He just kept going and ran right by me. Didn't even look in my direction, didn't try to take a swipe at me or anything. And I looked at this lady, and I was on the ground by this time because I had panicked so bad that I was trying to run and run and run, and I flopped. And I was laying down at this point, and I said to this lady, "What is with the polar bear?" And she says, "Oh, don't worry. They won't hurt you." So I got out of that ice street as fast as I could. And going back down to where my house was, there was this person on a bicycle. Looking back at the person on the bicycle, they looked like they could have been a teenager. They could have been an adult. I don't know. All I know is that they were a delivery service on a bicycle. They had newspapers, they had package delivery, like UPS, FedEx, and USPS all rolled in one. That's what this person was, but from a bicycle. And all the stuff was in the basket, and they were tossing it out to all the neighbors. They left something in my mailbox. When I got home, I checked my mailbox, and there was this package that they left there, and it was a handwritten note with an elastic band around a chocolate bar. And it said, "Now let's see if you leave this for me tomorrow, and let's play a game." The next day, I spent going from street to street to street, except the ice street. I avoided that at all cost. And chasing this person down on the bike, trying to get ahead of them so that I could leave the candy bar for them. And I could never catch them. And then there was another part of the dream. It like went into me at home, and the next scene is I'm now at a store. It wasn't clear in the dream if I was actually an employee or just a customer, but there was a customer that I was helping. But that didn't surprise me at all, because I do that in real life too. If somebody needs help and I'm at a store shopping, I'll help the person. So when I dreamt that, I don't really know. I could have been working there, I'm not sure. But this creepy looking dude came over. He looked like an undertaker, and he had on this stiff gray suit, and he was skinny, and he was taller than your average human. And he had this really bone-defining face. And he walked up to me, and I was kind of afraid. And he mumbled something at me. I don't know what he said exactly, but I wasn't interested, and I was trying to get away from him. So I left the store. I got into my car, and he followed me. He told me to roll down my window, and I did. He leaned in, he kissed me on my forehead, and he said, "Wake up." That gives me goosebumps even talking about it. I did wake up because my alarm went off at that next second. Like 1 second I'm sitting here and he's kissing me on the forehead telling me to wake up. The very next second, my alarm is blaring in my ear by my bedside table. That was so creepy. I woke up and had to check myself. Like, where am I? And I'm like, what is with these dreams? I don't know if it's regurgitated stress from all of the bad, negative, toxic environments I worked in corporate America. And if it's just coming to a head now, I don't know if it's my body purging all of this garbage that I harbored for so long. I don't know. I don't know if it's my body's way of healing and getting it all out of my system. I really don't have a clue. I just know it's creepy. Do you have action-packed filled dreams too that make no sense and that you have no idea where they're coming from? Thank you so much for watching today. Take care.